Hey everybody, welcome back to Escape to the Quarter Bin. I'm your host, Adrian Johnson. Thanks so much for coming back to the show. And if you could, definitely make sure to like, share, and subscribe the channel here, Inazuma Studios. And don't forget to support my Patreon as well at patreon.com. Now, just rolling right into it. I got a couple of books this week. In fact, I got three books. One of them, if you saw the thumbnail to this episode, you see is a mystery book. Ooh, and the reason it's a mystery book is that it has a pretty neat story to how I came across it. In addition to it being what it is, so definitely stay glued to the screen for that. But now, the first book I have is a perennial favorite, of many collectors, and it's a series that I've had before. I nearly had a full run of it, a couple of times and ended up selling them or whatnot, but I wanted with this one, with this issue this time, to maybe start getting those issues back. And that is Master of Kung Fu, The Hands of Shang-Chi. This is issue number 33, and I believe this is cover dated 1975, October of 1975. Now, Master of Kung Fu, like I mentioned, it is a classic. It's a favorite amongst collectors, because obviously it's inspired pretty much wholly by Bruce Lee and the movies of that period. For those who don't know, back in the early 70s, there was an influx, thanks to Bruce Lee, of martial arts films to the States. They became very popular, with films being imported from Hong Kong by the Shaw Brothers and other productions, so there was definitely a lot of mania as it relates to, martial arts at that time, which continued through, I would say, through through most of the 70s and 80s, just a, huge boom. But as it relates to Master of Kung Fu, this is done by the team of writer Doug Moench, Paul Gulacy, and Dan Atkins on the inks. And this stuff, man, it's just, it's funny because it's of its time, just in terms of, being that 70s, type of feel. And, it's just coming off of the spy movie craze of the 60s, with James Bond, Matt Helm, all that type of stuff. So it's interesting because Master of Kung Fu is a blend of both of those genres. You have martial arts mixed in with the spy stuff, and Shang-Chi is actually working with the British spy organization, MI6, and they go on adventures around the world. And he is always fighting against his father, who is God, what is his father's name? I'm looking right at him. Oh man, it'll come to me. Fu Manchu. I'm sorry, Fu Manchu. Yeah, so he's fighting to take down his organization. But yeah, this is just fun stuff, And Gulacy was starting very early in his career, but his stuff is just so stylized. I mean, you see here, you have this cyborg who has machine gun turrets in his eyes, and the pacing too is very well done. Gulacy, you can see, is obviously very influenced by Jim Steranko, and that goes back to what I was mentioning with the influence of spy movies, because obviously Jim Steranko did Nick Fury, Agent of Shield for Marvel as well during the late '60s. Just before this, time. So Steranko was very influential, to many young artists at that time, and obviously Gulacy was no different. Yeah, but this stuff it's so moody, you know, and so man, this is great. This is great right here, you know. Um, just his Gulacy's shots are so cinematic and just so. The thing about Gulacy to me is that his work, doesn't really have a lot of three-dimensional depth, and that's the same thing I could almost say about Steranko at certain points, because I love his Nick Fury Agent of Shield stuff, but it also seems like a lot of that stuff is just it's it's almost like right right there. There's no three dimensionality behind it. It's all surface. Everything is drawn like right there in front of you. But it's the composition of the thing that makes it work. You know. Um, but yeah, Master Kung Fu, very, very, very popular, and still to this day. And there was a dispute in terms of people have kind of asked, well, why they're reprinting all these older issues. Oh, hold on. Before I get to that point, this is what when I was talking earlier about Bruce Lee influence. This right here, Gulacy has a number of shots and subsequent issues, throughout his run on the book, where he takes these sequential shots of Shang-Chi dispatching guys, very much like Bruce Lee did in Enter the Dragon. If you remember Enter the Dragon, Bruce Lee, had a couple of sequences where he was taking out multiple, bad guys, in slow motion, like one after the other, and that's what Gulacy is approximating here, and I love it when he does this type of stuff. And again, it just harkens back to that cinematic influence that he had. But back to the point that I was about to mention, people have asked, like, why hasn't Master Kung Fu ever been reprinted? You reprint nearly every other old series, but you've never reprinted Master Kung Fu. That's because there had been a dispute with the Sax Romer organization. And Sax Romer is the creator of Fu Manchu way back in the, I believe in the very, very late 1800s, early 1900s, wrote the stories featuring Fu Manchu. And their organization, did not want reprints done of the Master Kung Fu stories because that's their character, and maybe they weren't getting royalties from that or what have you. But apparently they must have come to some type of resolution, because if I'm not mistaken, I just saw recently, maybe a few months back, that they have gone ahead and reprinted these stories now into paperbacks, and I believe an omnibus, a thick hardback omnibus is coming out as well. Okay, next. There are times when you go to the quarter bin, right? And okay, I have two checklists on me. I have my physical checklist, like on my phone or whatnot, but also have a mental checklist, in my head. And there are certain numbers that I just know, that I just remember. And so when I come across it, I know exactly, that's it. That's it. That's the book I'm looking for, And this book is one of those. Now, it's you wouldn't expect me to, want this book, but I was very, very curious, and you're gonna find out why. It's Weird War Tales number 64. Okay, I believe this is cover dated June of 1978. All right, so check this out. The reason why I wanted this particular book and I was surprised that it was in a quarter bin is for really one reason and one reason only. I mean, apart from, obviously the great Joe Kubert, cover, rest in peace, Joe. Um, the great, Kubert cover. What this is, and the reason why I remembered it so well is that, if I'm not mistaken, this is one of Frank Miller's. Yes, that Frank Miller. One of his very first jobs, when he was just getting into comics. The other one that I remember, before this, and I've never seen a copy of it, he had done an issue of Twilight Zone around the same time for the publisher Gold Key. And I forget what number that was, but I've always wanted to find that and just take a look at it and see what his stuff looked like, when he was first breaking in. But I definitely remember on my checklist, because I was a huge, Frank Miller fan, and I definitely remember Weird War Tales number 64. I want to get my hands on that just to see what's going on with it. Here we go. Yeah. So Frank Miller drew this story. See right here. Frank Miller, and he is being inked. Excuse me. He is being inked here by Danny Bulanati. Now, Bulanati is a Filipino artist, and he came over in that great, they call Philippine invasion, quote unquote, of the early 1970s, where DC went to the Philippines and gathered all of these Pinoy artists and, got them to work for, the company, and they were producing magnificent, marvelous artwork. Elsewhere on the channel here, I have several videos dedicated to some of the masters, that were coming over. But, check those out, when you get a chance. But anyway, back to this. Miller is drawing a story here called Deliver Me from D-Day. And, I'm a big military history buff, if you didn't know. And, just stuff like this is right up my alley, So I probably would have picked up, Weird War Tales, just because it was Weird War Tales. I love military history. But the interesting thing here is to see Miller's work. And the crazy thing is that, there's a story that famous artist Neil Adams loves to tell. He used to have and I think he still does. It's a studio called Continuity Associates in New York. And during the early 70s, when he was immensely popular, and he started the company with anchor Dick Giordano, he started getting young talent from around, the city, and they would come by to get work from him, or to get advice or to get, critiques, on their work to see if they were ready for the industry or whatnot. And, Adams has told on a couple of occasions in interviews or whatnot that, Miller was one of those young neophytes who would come by with his work, and, Miller was, he was, persistent about it. And Adams would tell him, like, hey, look, I don't think you're ready, keep working, just really bust his chops about it. But the one thing that Adams would say, and he did it, jokingly, but probably half jokingly, knowing him, he mentioned to, I guess, one of the other, people in the studio when he was looking over Miller's work one day, he was saying, hey, look, he knows he can't draw, but his storytelling is really, really good. So he's working on his storytelling, to make up for it. And I think it's true, in this early work. I mean, you see here, Miller's stuff is not bad. It's not bad. But here you have to wonder how much of this is Bulanati's inking, helping, as well, because a lot of those Pinoy anchors, when they, you know, were inking over, pencilers or whatnot, they would definitely import a lot of their own personal, ticks and, you know, preferences to them. So sometimes for certain ones, they would bury them under, the inks. But here you can still see a lot of Miller's work shining through. You can see down here in these little heads right here, the obvious Gil Kane influence, and the reason you can tell it's Gil Kane is by the noses. Gil Kane did a lot of these, minor like headshots with the nose upturned, and the same thing with and the eyes. Kane had those eyes too, those wilded out eyes, and the posing of the figures too, are very much Kane-esque. And obviously Miller would go on to greater things, of course, but it was just very interesting to see one of his first jobs here, and where he would go to and raise to such tremendous heights from. So yeah, so if you're ever looking in the quarter bins and you want to get just an example of the pure curiosity of Frank Miller's some of his earliest work, it's gonna be Weird War Tales number 64. Okay, now the mystery book that I've been teasing at, hinting at, in the thumbnail for this video, and earlier in this video. Okay, now the interesting story behind this, is gonna be pretty funny, and for what the book is, is pretty cool. All right, the mystery book is Wolverine, the limited series, issue number 2, cover dated 1982, and that's October of 1982, by the aforementioned Frank Miller and writer Chris Claremont. Now, this book right here, in fact, this whole series here is a certified, bona fide classic, okay? And the reason why I wanted to keep this book a mystery is that this book normally goes for about $25, $30 in good condition. You can see that this is not in the best condition. But, okay, check this out. The story behind how I got this out of a quarter bin is pretty funny. Now, full disclosure, it wasn't a quarter bin that I got this out of. It was actually a 50-cent bin, okay? And it was at this particular store. And the way they have the cheap bins set up is that you go, when you first come into the store, the cheap bins are always right by the door, right by the cash register. There are several boxes of them, and they're just right there. So when I come in, they know me there. They know I really don't go to the back. I always stay up front with the 50-cent boxes that they have, because they know I'm a bin diver. So I was doing my thing, going through, and I flip, and I'm like, wait a minute. Did I see what I think I just saw? So I flipped back. Sure enough, it was this issue, right? Boy, I pulled it out. I pulled it out in full view of the comics guy that was there. He was right at the cash register. I said, hey, look what I just pulled out of here. And at first, he tried to protest. I was like, nope. It was in here. You saw me pull it out, and he couldn't really protest after that because he knew that I had it dead to rights. It was mine, and it was in there. And plus, at this condition, too, he really wasn't going to get it for premium prices anyway if he tried to sell it otherwise. So, yeah, so I got this out of the 50-cent bin, and, man, this whole series, this whole limited series, is so popular, obviously because it's Wolverine and because it's so classic too. This was Wolverine's first breakout series, from the X-Men. Now, he had obviously gained popularity, inside the pages of Uncanny X-Men, particularly starting with the run of John Byrne. Now, Dave Cockrum drew him initially. And well, actually, no. Before that, he was introduced in the pages of Incredible Hulk, Incredible Hulk 181, where he was created by Len Wein and I believe drawn by Herb Trimpe first. But then they brought him into Uncanny X-Men, and there is where he was drawn by Dave Cockrum. I think Len Wein was writing Uncanny X-Men at the time and brought Wolverine over when he started writing the title. But Wolverine really did not gain super popularity until he was drawn by John Byrne, And then, he became a superstar within the realms of comics fandom, And Wolverine was such a popular character that they decided to break him off into his own limited series. Marvel did. And this was one of the earliest limited series. Before this, you had Contest of Champions, and I believe that's it. So this is like the second limited series that Marvel had, just in terms of it being like, 4 issues and focused on a particular character. And this one is one for the ages. Like I said, this is Frank Miller. And you see here, Miller is just coming off of his run on Daredevil, where he has become pretty much a star at this point, writing and drawing Daredevil. And this here is Miller, so far advanced within just, if Weird War Tales was 1978, this is 1982. You're talking about within 4 years, think how far Miller, had advanced, and just, oh man, I know this whole series by heart, I used to read this just all the time, and I've had this series before in paperback, hardcover. I've had almost all 4 issues of the limited series, before. Man, look at this stuff. I mean, this stuff is just, man, it's just, oh, I love this stuff. He's being inked here by Joe Rubinstein, and man, you just really, this is just, oh, man. The thing here about Miller is that, he's really coming into his own as far as his pacing, and his panel compositions as well. You see here that he's starting to use a lot of negative space, offsetting the panels, you know what I mean? And he does this motif all throughout the series. You can see it starting to repeat. And in a lot of his books, he tends to do that, just have like a motif of, panel layouts. Like in Dark Knight Returns, the layout would be the 16 panel grid and the television screens, as that motif. But yeah, man, this stuff, oh, man, I get goosebumps off this, because this is just such classic stuff. When I was a young collector, and I found out about this mini series, and I started getting into Miller, and I finally got my hands on this story. Oh, I used to, it's one of my favorites. I mean, it still is, but this stuff is just so classic. Wow. Oh. And then this stuff too, just these panel layouts, these kind of widescreen shots that Miller would do, oh, just wonderful, man, wonderful. Man, Miller, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, no, I'm thinking of issue number 4. Was colored by Lynn Varley, who would become his wife. I think they were boyfriend, girlfriend at this time, or soon to be. And there's an interesting story about that I may recount on another episode if you don't already know. But yeah, look, man, this is just, oh, man, I love this series. Miller, this action is just so fluid. That's one thing that Miller has really has really always, done very well is that kinetic action and the choreography of violence, comic book violence. The stuff just flows, and you can definitely see it in Daredevil, particularly in his in issue 181, the fight between Bullseye and Elektra. You can also check that out on the channel as well in my review of it. But yeah, oh man, it's kind of falling apart. This shot right here, I always love this. This is so good. Mariko, Wolverine's unrequited love. She's horrified by. She's never seen Logan, act out like that. She's just terrified of him. She's not the man that she thought that she loved. And in the background here, you see Yukio, just like, gotcha. And she was the one who was featured in the outset here. But oh man. Yeah. So that's all I got for you guys this time. Once again, thanks for checking out Escape to the Quarter Bin. As always, if you could, definitely don't forget to like, share, and subscribe here on the Inazuma Studios channel. And hey, I have a Patreon page as well. Go to patreon.com, look up Inazuma Studios, and for just $1 a month, you can definitely support the channel here. And those dollars, some of those will be going to the quarter bins. Thanks, guys. Check you later.